Okay, well, we're at 12:15, so we'll get started here. Hello and welcome. My name is Amy Erickson. I'm a lead faculty coach and development specialist here at UAGC. I'm the host of this session, Empowering Faculty Excellence, Leveraging a Playbook and Checklist to Drive Online Faculty Engagement and Student Success. By joining us today, you acknowledge that this session is being recorded and will be shared with TLC-related materials. Microphones will be muted for this presentation, but we encourage you to post questions and comments in the chat. Also, we have enabled live transcription. If you'd like to use it, click the Show Captions button at the bottom of your Zoom window. And now I'm pleased to introduce our presenters. Dr. Ben Pearson is the Department Chair for General Education and Social Sciences at Excelsior University. He holds a master's and PhD in modern European history from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and he also holds a master's in professional and technical writing with a focus on online course design and writing instruction from the University of Arkansas, Little Rock. He has 15 years of experience teaching online courses and 10 years of experience as an online program administrator. Dr. Mary
Hi, everyone.
Berkery, sorry?
Hi, everyone.
Sorry, I should let Ben greet you. Dr. Mary Berkery is the Department Chair for Liberal Arts and Director of Strong Start Initiatives at Excelsior University. Berkery holds a PhD and Master's in Women's, Gender, and Sexuality History from Binghamton University and a BA in U.S. History from Union College. She has more than 11 years of experience working with non-traditional adult online learners. I am also part of this presentation. I have a master's degree from the University of Minnesota and an undergraduate degree from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I've taught online, hybrid, and residential courses over the last 15 years, and I am currently, as I noted before, an educational development specialist here at UAGC. So we'll let Dr. Berkery and Dr. Pearson get started.
Wow. Okay. Thank you for that introduction, Amy. That was very thorough. All right. So we're going to jump right into it. Before we jump into the project that we're going to be discussing, we want to give you a little bit of context about who Excelsior is, in case you don't know us. We are a not-for-profit university based in Albany, New York. So we are in the afternoons, 1:15 p.m. here. We're primarily online, asynchronous courses, 8 weeks for the most part. And our students are primarily returning adult learners. So if you're coming from UAGC, that might be a pretty familiar demographic to you, not a dissimilar population. But you can see here that 77% of our students are also working full time while they're taking courses. Our average age is 35.6 years old. And, we have a strong number of veteran and active duty military students as well. All right, and then I just want to share with you what Excelsior's mission is, just to give you some context for why the work that we were doing was so important here. So Excelsior provides educational opportunity to adult learners with an emphasis on those historically underrepresented in higher education. Excelsior meets students where they are academically and geographically, offering quality instruction and the assessment of learning. And you can see there that quality instruction is not normally underlined and bolded on our mission, but we've done so today to reinforce that that's really a focal point here, is making sure that we can improve the instructional experience for our students. Okay, so our faculty model might be familiar to you, again, if you are from UAGC or a similar institution. We do create master course shells that are created by a subject matter expert and instructional designer to ensure consistency of the instructional experience. And so that moves the instructor in the classroom from the old sage on the stage adage to the guide on the side. And it helps us ensure consistency when, so I oversee a first year experience course that can sometimes run 40 or 50 sections every term. And we want to make sure that the students there are having a consistent course experience with similar outcomes and assignments and rubrics and all of that. So the instructor's role is a guide on the side, and we have a system where we have department chairs like Ben and myself. We have full-time faculty in various disciplines, and then we have part-time faculty who are located across the country, just like our students. Okay, before we jump into what the role of the instructor is and how we aim to improve that role in these asynchronous online classrooms like we have at Excelsior, like you have at UAGC and anywhere else that you might be joining us from, if you could join the Menti, and Ben has posted it in the chat as well, you can either use the QR code with your phone or just go to menti.com and type in that 33493434 and give us your thoughts on what students need most from their online instructor when they're taking courses in this format, which is asynchronous and online learning. And I'm just going to pull up the results here as we get into it. Oh, yeah, lots of people in here already. Awesome. All right, so flexibility, kindness, grading feedback to enable improvement, effective communication, connection. That's a very difficult one to achieve in an asynchronous online environment. It's something that's nevertheless incredibly important. Empathy, support, substantive interactions with feedback that helps progress learning. I love these. Thank you. So a feeling of value. Oh, I love that one. So this is a lot of these are things that we're going to be talking about today, and some of it is about personalizing that classroom experience to make sure that that human connection is prioritized, and some of it is about making sure that students are getting rich, substantive, individualized feedback, really personalized to their learning, so that they can make the improvements that they need throughout the course to meet the outcomes. And feel free to keep popping in there, and we can come back to it at the end if we have time as well. All right, so another reason why here. So you've already gotten at the crux of it with that mentee, but really the research supports that when a student has at least one supportive relationship with a faculty member is a key factor in impacting not just their success in the classroom and their success in achieving their degree, but also their social integration at the university or their sense of belonging and their well-being post-college. So research has found that when students agreed with either of these statements, my professors at college cared about me as a person, and I had at least one professor at college who made me excited about learning, it had a positive impact on their academic success, their social integration, and their well-being and thriving in their work after college. So what's important to us is that every student should be able to agree with those statements, right? And that's not true regardless of which institution you're at. And so that's the failing there, is thinking that students can make their entire way through a degree and not have one of those meaningful relationships that they can say, I had a professor who cared about me, not just my grade in the class, but as a person, and that I had somebody for whom I felt excited about learning. Okay, so the project that we had here, the faculty playbook and checklist, which we're going to go into detail in a moment, had several core goals at the start of the project. The first of those is that we wanted to increase faculty engagement in those asynchronous online courses with the intention that when faculty engagement increases, student engagement increases. And when student engagement increases, it leads to greater success in the course and greater satisfaction and persistence. We wanted to focus on retention and success. So we know that high quality instruction is going to directly impact persistence, retention, and success. And we'll talk more about that as we go. We wanted to make sure we had an eye on equity and access to ensure that every student has that high quality experience with a high quality instructor who cares about them as a person and on an even playing field. So we have no student who is slipping through the cracks and having an experience where they can't say that. We also wanted to focus on quality improvement. I don't know about your institution, but we've been around a long time. We were a pioneer in the online learning world, and many of our faculty have stayed with us through that whole journey. So, at the very outset, when Excelsior started offering courses, they were on CD-ROMs. And we don't even have CD-ROM drives on our computers anymore, let alone still offer courses that way, right? But we went from CD-ROM to WebCT to Blackboard and now into Canvas. And a lot has changed in those last 15 to 20 years or so. So at the same time, faculty need to be able to show improvements and keep up with the trends in online learning. What it means to be a good professor in 2025 working in an asynchronous online environment is very different than what it meant even in 2016, not to mention going back to the earlier days of CD-ROMs and the early days of Blackboard. So we want to make sure that we're providing a space and an expectation for all of our faculty that they continue professional development in the field, that they're always learning and growing and keeping up with the latest trends in online learning. And then finally, we want to make sure we're recognizing and sharing best practices so that when we have outstanding faculty that are doing well and having great success on student outcomes, that we're celebrating that and that we're also sharing what it is that they're doing well so that we can improve the classroom experience for everyone. So we're taking somebody who's up here and somebody who's down here, and the intention is to bring everybody up to the level of our best performers. Okay, so what is the playbook then? The idea was that it was created in conjunction with a new faculty orientation course so that as we onboard new adjunct and full-time faculty, they're going through that orientation course. But the rest of our faculty wouldn't necessarily go through that if they were already here, but we wanted to make sure we were providing them with the same kind of information about what it looks like when instruction is done well. What are the requirements, the bare bones things you must do in the classroom, and what are the best practices, and then what are examples of those best practices in action. So the playbook itself contains a philosophy statement, the why behind our teaching and what we believe as Excelsior University, around 6 tenets: pursuit of excellence, embracing diversity, fostering innovation, promoting integrity, helping our students be career ready, and serving society or social responsibility. Within that as well, we also outline teaching requirements and best practices around sharing your expertise. So what does that mean in terms of active engagement in the course, discussion boards, announcements, creating video overviews, personalized and timely feedback. So making sure that every student receives individualized substantive work, markup on their work to help them improve and grow over those 8 weeks. The 8-week courses move extremely fast for students, so we need to make sure that faculty are keeping up with that and giving feedback in a period of time that's going to be useful. Communication and responsiveness in terms of reaching out to students, responding to messaging from students and from us as well. And then what we call student success collaboration, which is collaborating with other units at the college who also have the end goal of student success. So whether that's accessibility services, tech support, academic advising, and so forth. And then engaging with Excelsior community. So making sure everyone's aware of all the professional development opportunities that we offer. We offer pre-term webinars every 8 weeks to get faculty up to speed on what they need to know for that term and other social engagements. Then we provide information on who to contact at any given time. Some examples of those best practices. So it's one thing to say, you know, you should be engaged in the discussion board, but what does that look like? What are different ways that you can be involved in the discussion board in an effective way? And then the faculty checklist. So the checklist itself was a way to break down the items in the playbook week by week to give faculty some guidance on what I should be doing at any particular time around those requirements and the best practices. So it was created in collaboration with all these different units that you can see here from a former retreat where they gave us all hoodies to make sure that it applied to everybody, right? So what a clinical instructor, nursing instructor needs to be doing in the classroom is a little bit different than an English composition instructor, but what are the kind of requirements that span across all of those that we can make sure everybody agrees on and that all faculty can meet? So what it contains is some standard activities in all weeks, and this document on the side here is a very bland PDF, but we also uploaded it into a project management software called Monday.com to help with digital tracking so that we're not just doing this through a PDF. So you have pre-term activities as well. How do you get your course ready to go for day one? What does it look like to have a course that students step into and they feel welcome and supported and they know who you are? What are the essential student success activities that needed to be completed weekly in terms of if a student is not engaging, if they're suddenly dropping off and their behavior is changing, who should I be reaching out to? How do I alert other units like academic advising to help? And then what do I do to wrap up the term, extensions, final grading, and so forth? Now, at the end of the day, though, a PDF is not going to be used by anybody. The idea here is that we wanted to make sure that it wasn't something that people read through and looked at and said, that's nice, and then didn't really integrate into their daily habits. So what we wanted to do was make sure we provided a lot of training and onboarding to the process and then made it a part of everybody's weekly activity. So we created a frequently asked questions document right away to help people situate why we were doing this, all the things that we just explained about why it's important to the student experience. We built it into that Monday.com platform in order to be able to provide an easy way for people to click through it digitally and for our tracking purposes. We recorded some trainings and we had live trainings before it launched for faculty. And then we had a roadshow about the what, why, and when across the university. So myself and another department chair went to units that you wouldn't think would be involved in the faculty and student experience, like fiscal and human resources and financial aid and so forth. And we explained to them why it mattered to them too and how they could help with this culture change of what we were trying to do. And the idea here is that we all needed to be rowing in the same direction. Amy knows a little bit more about this than we do in terms of what it takes, but we do believe that you all have to be moving your oars in the same direction for the boat to go. Right, Amy? She agrees. Okay. All right. And now Ben's going to take it over and look at the impact on student success.
Yeah, so Mary has talked about our goals, what we wanted to accomplish with this initiative. The big question really is, did it work, right? What kind of impact did it have on the student experience, on outcomes that we can measure? And so I'm going to look a little bit here at several different metrics. One of them is student course evaluations, so student perceptions of faculty quality. One of them is grade distribution, so actual grade outcomes in the class, how those changed. And finally, we have some student feedback as well to kind of capture that more personalized understanding of how this changed students' experiences. So this is a little bit of a busy chart here. I apologize for the busyness, but we have 8 metrics we use in our faculty evaluation tool from students focused on faculty quality. And they are on this chart here, going clockwise from the top. So starting at the very top there and going clockwise. Overall satisfaction with the course. The instructor encouraged me to engage. The instructor provided feedback for improvement. They provided timely feedback, so it's feedback that was actionable and just in time. Instructor presence in the course. Building a relationship with students, which is one of the ones that we know is so important and yet so hard to do in asynchronous online classes. They challenged me to do my best work, and overall, I would recommend them to somebody else. And you can see here, the blue line on the inside there is our calendar year 24. That was before we implemented the playbook and checklist, so before they went live. The orange line is spring 25. The green line is summer 25. So the 2 terms immediately following the implementation. And you can see here, it's a small but very noticeable change in every single metric in our student course evaluations of faculty quality. The biggest change by far is in the hardest one and the lowest one historically for us, which is question 6, building a relationship with students. So we can see here that students did feel faculty were making more of an effort to reach out to them and to build a relationship with them. We see this is a 7-point Likert scale that we use for our evaluation. And you can see about a 0.1 change on that scale, which is about 1% in percentage terms. So again, small, but noticeable and meaningful. This is the same actually information, but for our department. So Mary and I are both Department of Liberal Arts. We broke it down by our department as well as the whole university. You can see the same basic results here, right? It's a little bit different in some of the details. We had a higher baseline and slightly smaller improvement in some areas because of that. But same improvement across the board. We did see here in our department a little bit of regression after that first term of rolling it out. So that shows the importance of follow-up, the importance of maintaining people's focus on the goal and really continuing to work on it going forward. This is also a little hard to see because these bars are very small, but this is grade distributions. And this is for all of Excelsior University here. Again, the blue is pre-checklist, and the orange and green are the terms after the checklist was implemented. You see here an increase in A's, roughly the same number of B's, roughly the same number of C's. But what's really, I think, meaningful here is the D's, F's, W's, and AW's. So AW's for us are basically withdrawals that are administrative. We withdraw the student because they are not engaging in the class at all. And that tends to be students who either are overwhelmed, disengaged, struggling in some significant way. In the same way, for our students at least, most of the students who get D's and F's also, it's not because they aren't doing well on the assignments, it's because they aren't doing the assignments. They aren't engaging in the class the way they should be to do well. And so you can see here, it's a little bit small, but for example, D's decreased from 1.37% of all grades to 1.18, F's from 3.25 to 3.04, W's from 2.7 to 2.01, and AW's from 2.3 to 1.81. This is a small change in terms of numbers, but this is actually a very big change in terms of term over term percentage. This is in many cases 20, 30, 40% decrease in things like F's, D's, W's, and AW's. So a small number of students, but among those students who are affected by this, the numbers are being cut drastically. And this suggests to us the early outreach parts of the checklist and playbook really are making a difference. The various ways of flagging advisors to get them involved with students who aren't engaged in class, the efforts to reach out to students through email and other ways, to give them a chance to get caught up, to get on track in the class. And this is the same basic data again, but for our department, liberal arts. And you see the same basic trends here. So, in some cases, actually even more dramatic decrease in W's. So across the board, we're seeing positive student outcome results as well. So takeaway points from all of this. We saw a significant improvement in student perceptions of faculty quality. They're having a better experience in the course subjectively. We saw a significant improvement in student academic outcomes. So the objective measures of what students are learning and how well they're performing in the course are showing improvement, and especially in our weakest areas. So we see, for example, with those relationships question in our faculty course evaluation, that the biggest improvement was in this area that we struggle with historically, and have not always done a great job with in our asynchronous online model. We also see the improvement is sustained over time, at least 2 semesters now since being implemented. There's been a little bit of regression in some areas, but in general, still overall improvement. And we see that early intervention seems to be effective. Not only are students feeling better about the classes, there are fewer students not engaging, fewer students getting those Ds, Fs, and Ws that show a lack of involvement in the class.
And this one's back to me. So the data in aggregate can tell us a lot, and Ben's data is certainly very persuasive, but there's something also to be said about the individual impact that it has on individual students. And you can only really see that from stories like this one. And anyone, I'm sure many of us in this room who have taught in a classroom, whether that's in person or virtually, have undoubtedly received a note like this from a student. And that reminds you of all of the effort that you're putting into grading, all of the effort put into answering questions, providing support and encouragement, checking off checklists in Monday.com, even when it's not a pleasant activity to have to do that now that to your week. It has a meaningful impact, not just on student success metrics or whether they register with us for the next term, but on their lives. And that's what matters. So I'll just read this up over quickly. And, it always makes me choke up a little bit, but I laughed and then I cried when I saw your comments on my paper. I can't tell you how much this class has meant to me. This is my first real class in 15 years, and I have spent my entire life feeling that I am street smart, but not school smart. Each time I do well, I am baffled. My insecurities say, well, maybe it was an easy assignment and everyone did well. Thank you so much for your encouragement, positive feedback, gentle criticism, and responsiveness. I know you may not always realize the impact that a class has on a person, but I've gained so much more than content and skills. I am raising my wounded inner child decades late and becoming whole. So that, in the nutshell, is why we all do what we do, right? And we want more students to have impactful feelings like that at the end of the course. And this is Amy's perspective as somebody who's a part-time faculty member with us and has experienced the fun and joy of entering checklist items into .com. She can give us her perspective.
Right. Well, thank you so much. So I feel it's imperative to recognize the department chairs for their absolute exemplary leadership and communication surrounding this initiative. The expectations were incredibly clear, and they were conveyed through synchronous meetings, as noted, and as well as through very thorough resources with the faculty. And the resources were detailed, and they provided practical guidance to support faculty in meeting these weekly instructional expectations. And the department chairs made themselves available to answer questions as they arose throughout the term. And they also were continually updating the resources for accuracy and also for clarity if there was any confusion around any of the material. I would be remiss not to acknowledge my own department chairs, Dr. Pearson and Dr. Berkery, whose approach to this initiative exemplified the university's dedication to faculty. Their communication was consistently gracious and collegial. They expressed appreciation at every stage of the process, and they were really transparent in acknowledging that this initiative would require more work from all of us. And they simultaneously emphasized that the long-term value of this investment would be for our students and for the institution. And from a faculty standpoint, I found the faculty playbook really an invaluable tool for organizing my teaching week in the online classroom. The weekly checklist not only clarified the expectations, but I felt they were really motivating in terms of wanting to strive and for excellence and to meet the expectations they'd set out or to even exceed those expectations. There was always this little bit of satisfaction you'd get from being able to check yes to all the boxes on that Monday form that we would fill out every week. But beyond organization, the resources I feel like also gave us a broader perspective because I feel like it can be really easy as an instructor to get overly focused on our one class, and you kind of lose sight of everything else. But the playbook's emphasis on these intervention strategies and calendar management and engagement practices and all the administrative elements um, showed that our work was contributing to a greater purpose, and that was supporting success for students throughout the entirety of their academic journey, not just in my single course. Um, Finally, they were really good too about sharing the results. One of the meetings that Ben and Mary hosted featured our teaching and analytics coordinator, and the information he shared was so compelling, the results that you've seen in this presentation, that it was both affirming and really inspiring, because the data demonstrated measurable success, but also reinforced a really strong sense of community among the faculty, and we could see in very tangible terms that these efforts were making a difference, and we were part of something larger than ourselves. And that was a coordinated, evidence-based approach to advancing student achievement. So as an adjunct, I cannot say enough about it. And I will turn it back over, I think, to Ben now, right?
Yes, thank you, Amy.
Mm-hmm.
So any initiative has lessons learned, right? Nothing goes perfectly the first time, and this is no exception to that rule. So what are some of the lessons we learned along the way that we would pass on to somebody else trying to implement a similar initiative? So any kind of big change is always a trade-off between speed of implementation and kind of thoroughness of planning, getting everyone on board, building that consensus. I think we did a very good job internally with our staff and our full-time faculty of really socializing these documents in advance. We had a lot of chance for question and answer, feedback and revision. Because we were moving so fast, we had fewer opportunities for our part-time faculty in the first term we rolled it out to really kind of become comfortable with the document and the ideas. And so there was definitely some nervousness at first. There was some concern about workload. And I think it took some time to get people on board, and sharing those positive stories is part of what really, I think, achieved that in the end for us. So, given enough time, I think, and given a longer time frame, it would have been good to do a little more when we have meeting with faculty, to share these with them, get their feedback, and kind of talk through their concerns earlier. In addition to that, again, any project you roll out is going to have speed bumps along the way, and this is no exception. The way some of our logistics, our planning for how this would work, just in practice in terms of nuts and bolts of the project management software and the forms faculty would fill out, was a little rocky at first. There was some points of ambiguity in some of the questions. There was some confusion, and I would say, the goal here really is to plan for success, but then also be really flexible and willing to adapt as needed. And what we did, we made a lot of changes in that first term. We did this. We were very responsive to faculty questions, concerns, confusion, and put a lot of work into making sure that the second term it would be it would be clearer, and there'd be fewer problems along the way. And in fact, Amy actually first taught with us in that second term, her first with this document. In her second term, it rolled out, and so Amy got to experience a somewhat smoother, somewhat nicer rollout, and the less rocky one, which I'm glad. I think communication is so important. Any kind of change management involves the need for frequent communication. Our dean likes to say 7 times in 7 different ways, and this is no exception to that. For sure, it was really important to get everyone internally on the same message, saying the same thing, and to be able to communicate to faculty from every different communication they receive from different people at the university, both how to do this process, what it would entail, what it would involve, clear step-by-step instructions, but also why. Why are we doing this? Why is this important to us? What is the rationale behind making these changes here? I would say follow-up, as we've learned, is also important. So we have been department chairs have been every week since rollout, really spot checking faculty, picking a couple faculty to spot check, just kind of going through the course to see what's going on there, and engaging in coaching. And the coaching has really been, at least for me, very, very valuable in terms of me learning more about challenges faculty were facing with the process or with the course, but also in helping them understand better how they could do these things, how they could check out these boxes, carry out these initiatives in ways that were maybe a little faster, more efficient, easier for them as well. So it's been kind of working on fine-tuning our processes and making sure everyone really is on board and is consistently pursuing this. As I said earlier, because of the speed of rollout, some faculty had some initial concerns about how this would impact workload. Mainly it was workload they were concerned about. And it was very important for department chairs to be empathetic, to hear those concerns, to listen to them. I spent a lot of time answering emails, a lot of time meeting with people in groups or individually to talk about their concerns. And, first of all, being empathetic, saying, I understand where you're coming from. I get that. But also steering that conversation towards the goals. The goal here is student success. The goal here is that our students are achieving their goals in life by being successful in college, being successful in their careers. And so these are steps that we believe, and now we have evidence, are making a difference for these students. And my sense has been that faculty have really appreciated that learning about, seeing the data on the positive impact has made a big difference in terms of people really buying in and being on board with this and realizing that there's more work in some places, yes, but there's ways to do that work that are more efficient, and also look at the results, look at how the students are appreciating this, look at what a difference it's making in their lives. So another important piece of this has been sharing and celebrating good news. Amy mentioned one meeting, but in many different meetings, we have made a point of sharing back the most recent updates on the data of what we're seeing. We've had some staff who are actually also students here sharing their experiences personally in the courses and saying, this change really made a difference for me. I felt so much more connected to the instructor and to the course. So that was a really positive change I saw as a student. And then finally, recognition and kudos. So in addition to kind of spot checking and coaching, it's really important to give credit where credit is due. And we've had so many faculty really embrace this and do incredible work that we've been trying very hard in our pre-term webinar meetings, for example, to highlight faculty. We can't get all of them every time, of course, and I always feel like there's not enough names on the list because we're missing people. But at least recognizing many of those names of people who are doing a great job, who are seeing exemplary performance from, and we want them to know we see it and we appreciate it. I know they appreciate that recognition because I've gotten emails from them saying, "Oh, I saw my name in the pre-term webinar slide, and I was just so flattered that you mentioned me." So I think it really has made a positive difference to celebrate the success and celebrate people's good work.
Okay, so now we will open it up if anybody has any questions. And as we're waiting for questions to come in through the chat, I also just want to say, because sometimes I feel when Amy is starting to talk and she's like a plant in the audience that's just saying nice things about us. And one of the people that we felt like we needed to recognize very often is Amy. And that the idea at the end of the day with this playbook and checklist is to take the outstanding instructors, and I'm sure if you work with Amy at UAGC, you know this about her too, the people who are the most engaged in their classroom, the most empathetic and supportive of their students, and let everybody else come up to that level too, so that every student, whether or not they're fortunate enough to be in Amy's actual section, can have an experience like it is to be in Amy Erickson's class. I know you guys must love Amy too. We love Amy. All right, so in any case, we are here if anybody has any questions, and also our emails are here as well. If you'd like to follow up by email, we're happy to continue the conversation.
I was thinking as you guys were talking, I remember the last time we presented, you talked about how quickly you put this together, and I was just amazed. And I think people in this group would also be similarly amazed to hear how this all came together in the time frame that it came together.
Yeah, this was about 6 months from being a concept, in the ideas of our leaders and our faculty to actually rolling out in practice, like being in the classroom, being there for all faculty, which felt really fast to me as one of the people involved in rolling it out. It felt like a very fast time frame, but we were able in that time to have a lot of meetings, starting with academic administration, department chairs, and full-time faculty, and kind of talking through what we thought were the most important and valuable aspects of teaching in our classes, bringing in some research on that, and talking through it together. So the items on the checklist and playbook really were, this was created in a grassroots way, really drawing on the expertise of our faculty and our staff. We talked through that a lot. There was a number of meetings of kind of working through and talking through all of that. And then, we had the rollout, which felt very, very quick to me, at least. But in the end, you adjust and course correct. And when there were speed bumps along the way, we figured it out, and it seems like it's working pretty smoothly at this point. So yeah, it was a fast process.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah, I
really
think it speaks to the institutional priority too, as well. So, things like this can take many, many years at big institutions because they're just never the first thing on upper leadership's mind, right? The faculty experience and then the experience in the classroom. But the provost at Excelsior was very laser focused on how we can improve the teaching experience to make sure that our students have better outcomes and better relationships with their faculty. And so, all hands on deck. I had that slide that shows all the different units that were involved in it, in the creation of this document, getting something standing up so that we can, continuously improve and refine from there.
wonderful. Well, if there aren't any other questions, we'll just give people a second here. But in the meantime, I just want to thank you both so much, Ben and Mary, and thank you to the audience for participating in today's session. We've posted a link in the chat to nominate TLC presentations for conference awards, and it's a place where you can share your feedback on this presentation. So if you want to grab that, we'd really appreciate it. And thank you so much. If there are no other questions, we'll give you 9 minutes of your morning back.
Thanks everybody for coming.
All
Thank you
right.
all.
Thank you. Okay.